Tanya Vucetic. Wow, what a great conversation. She is so inspiring. She's a CEO of a great company in southern Los Angeles, but her backstory is absolutely fascinating. She where do I begin? Her parents are Eastern European and Latin. She's first generation. So she always kind of felt kind of out of place a little bit being in California. And then she got her undergrad, and then she decided to go to Hong Kong to finish or to have another degree. And just the challenges that were faced there, absolutely incredible. She came back. She's heavily into finance. She worked in a lot of different areas. She got frustrated at a position and decided to start coding. She took a course, paid for it, and decided to do coding, which eventually led her to Blockforms, which is the company that she's the CEO now of. And she has a great relationship with the founders, and we talk a lot. I love talking to small businesses, startups, SaaS companies. I always bring up sales, how many of the small companies just look at it as dirty. I love to talk about the difference between management and leadership. Just a wonderful conversation, and her perspective is so enlightening and so refreshing. The way she tackles ideas and the I was going to say struggle, but just the difference between art and science. But a great conversation with Tanya. I know you're going to enjoy it. I certainly did. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic. I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. My goodness, I am so excited to talk to you, Tanya Vucetic.
That's great. Well said.
Why is math beautiful and feminine?
Why is math beautiful and feminine? Ooh, you've listened to other conversations I've had before. I've found that, and I don't think there's any denying that men gravitate to careers in math and sciences. And I actually find math to be quite a feminine subject because it's very powerful, but delicate. If there's anything, one minute thing wrong, it doesn't work. It takes a lot of patience and grace when you are attempting complex problem solving. And often those characteristics are associated with femininity.
Math generally has one answer, right? So art has multiple answers. Difference between art and science, just generally speaking. You like one answers. You like a single answer.
I don't think that's true about me. I think I like certainty, but open to change and open to perspective. So, that being said, while there's one answer in math, there's many ways to get to that answer, right?
Very good point, Tanya. Yeah, very good point. Yeah, there are many ways to get there. I've always thought it was beautiful. Some say it's the language of the universe, but just the feminine part was just help me with that.
I think it's important to change the perspective on what makes math approachable. And if we change the narrative, it will be more inviting to women, young girls, to participate in the subject. And
Hmm.
so that's where my coining of math being feminine
Ah.
comes from, because math drives all businesses, whether we're thinking aeronautics, cars, any type of engineering, tech, or even fashion, beauty, story writing. Story writing even has a formula to it, right?
Hmm.
So even math powers the underlying components of art.
Hmm. Do you are you familiar with synesthesia?
I am not.
Synesthesia is when you see some artists have it, music artists, painters, when they see a particular, hear a note or see a color, they see a number.
Oh, interesting. I've heard of, and I've also heard the reverse of seeing colors when
Same
experiencing
thing.
numbers. Okay,
Yeah. Like I have
yes,
a friend who sees the number 5, it's always in red.
interesting.
So you don't have that.
No,
Yeah, it's fascinating that connection. What has you took it upon yourself? You've got an incredible story, Tanya. But at this one point, you took it upon yourself to start coding. You paid for classes. You started coding, and coding is very mathematical. It's very formulaic. It's very logical. How did that help you? Well, how did that help you in being a CEO now?
I live and breathe and love optimization. And I think the underlying
Mm,
principles of optimization can be mathematical, it can be communication. There's a huge part, a people component to optimization. And even coding, there's an art to it, right? So in the
mm,
data science world, it's a very exploratory when you are looking for underlying patterns and determining exciting approaches to take toward the data that you have, or determining the data that you need. And there are many ways to code the same function, right?
mm,
So one person's logic can be different to another's, and we're all learning from each other what is the shortest distance between input to output. And that is true in business, that is true
hmm.
in different times of the business cycle, whether you're starting from scratch, building something, or scaling something. So I take that question and like to challenge it with, and
Mm.
embrace it with, there's still the math and the hard science and the art to achieve the end.
Fascinating. Fascinating the way you're interweaving art and science. I believe your first language you taught was SQL, was sequential query language, it's a database
Of the
language.
coding languages, that's true.
Yeah. So you're sitting there building select statements, right? And you're going through these data science, right? So in order to deal anything with a relational database, yeah, it has to know SQL, and you're figuring out how to talk to large amounts of data. How is this opening up your world?
How is this opening up my world? It's training me, right? It's training
Mm,
me to think systematically. And I fondly and terrifyingly look back on when I first, when you're a teenager, you think you know everything, and you get to college and you learn that you don't know anything.
mm,
It's the same when you learn a new coding language. It's not just to get what you're looking for out of the data. It's a new way of thinking that you're
mm,
adapting your mind to.
mm,
And
mm.
SQL is a popular and, in my opinion, optimal place to start for those interested in diving into the world of big data.
Yeah, it certainly is, and it's fascinating to me. If we so fascinating. You're in the Southern California. You're in California. Parents are Serbian and Mexican, I
Mexican.
believe. Yeah, so quite a diverse. Your first generations. At one particular, you don't feel kind of you fit in some areas, but at one point you take it upon yourself just to leave everything and go to Hong Kong. Tanya. You go to
I
school
did.
there by yourself. You've been to Europe. You've been to Latin America. You're going to Hong Kong by yourself, and Tell me about that. I mean, the experience of that was just must have been just incredible, life changing.
It was life changing, and for any listeners, I know that it was, and doing something like that is very exciting,
Mm,
but it's also a very isolating experience. So there's a lot of time to
mm,
reflect and dig deep and really find yourself and either reinvent yourself or more establish the your true self. So during that time, I remember feeling like I regressed. I was so certain of who I was.
mm.
And then I moved across the world
Yeah.
and had my eyes open wide to different cultures. I'm from Northern California, lived in Southern California a long time, very diverse part of the US, but I hadn't had the experience of being on someone else's turf full time. Tons of
Mm.
traveling, but that's totally different than living somewhere.
Sure.
And having school taught to me from a greater Asia business perspective, it was life changing. And I remember feeling like, oh my goodness, that same feeling in college. Oh my goodness, I don't know anything. And then like the valley, and then before I go up to the next peak.
You're talking about the diversity of, of going to your parents, then going to Hong Kong, and your travel. I heard you say once that Vienna was your most favorite city, I believe.
It is, yes. I love Vienna. It's time for me to go back.
Why do you love it?
I think that there is a it's one of those things you can't describe. I just loved
Mm,
how I felt when I was there. And I felt
mm,
very whimsical, magical. It was a special time in my life. I was traveling with a close friend, a
mm,
bit of familiarity because of the proximity to Serbia, but it was still
hmm,
new and interesting. And it I wasn't I was there at the right place in my life, and it felt great to
mm.
be there.
So much art, right? So much. I
Yes.
mean, that's happened there. The painting, the music, yeah, Vienna is an underrated, wonderful, wonderful city, and not necessarily too expensive as some of the bigger cities.
No, not at all, and maybe that is also what felt great
Mm,
about it when I was
mm.
24.
Right, part of the charm. Yeah,
Do more.
yeah. So at this point in your life, you're CEO now. I want to talk a little bit about how you got there, but I love the way when we talked about math, you kept on describing like the art involved and the science involved. As being a CEO, how much is art? How much is science for
Oh,
you?
I think it's all art, or
Hmm.
I'm teasing. There's definitely, steadfast truths about
Sure.
how to do business and techniques and principles to abide by that lend themselves to success. But there's no one size fits all. There's all
Mm,
this debate around technical founders or sales founders or marketing founders, which are the best,
mm,
which are most successful, male, female, what
mm,
mix of demographics, uh, and they all work for different reasons, and they all deploy different strategies, and every business has a different soul and vision and purpose, and again, many paths to Rome, right?
mm. Have you been to Rome?
I have not yet, no.
Ah, I see. Any part of Italy?
I was in Venice.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, in
Venice. Yeah.
Verano.
And Verano, yes, yes. My family's from the south. So is it lonely being a CEO?
It can be.
Yeah.
I have other CEO friends, and the thing that's interesting about having the title CEO is it can mean a lot or it can mean not much. It depends on your
Mm,
organization,
mm,
and I wear it with humility and also pride,
mm,
as we're still very much a small business that's growing and learning. And but we are, we're post revenue. We've found our ideal client profile, and while we're not yet this big renowned business where people are thinking, how did we not use block forms in the past? Like they can't even imagine a world where they didn't use our product, which is our goal.
Mm.
Uh, there's still a lot to be said for having come this far, and it's very difficult.
Hmm. How is the relationship with you and the founders?
Yeah, the relationship is very solid. I feel like I hit the lottery with my co-founders. We have similar value systems, mutual respect. If it wasn't for them, I don't know if I would have made it this far or we would have made it this far. It's very much like a personal relationship. Not everyone is having their best day, and we have to balance each other based on where we're at in life. It's been a few years now, and we've really been through a lot and stuck it out together.
Hmm.
So I know I've heard many horror stories, so I count my stars every day for how lucky I am for such a solid team we are.
The Google founders don't get enough credit, I believe, for bringing in a CEO at a certain point. They right, so they're both technical people, and they just said we can't, bring the company any further, and it takes a great bit of humility of, this is my baby, but I'm not a business person, I can't do it, and they brought somebody on and they're running it. That takes a great amount of, like I said, humility and respect, and so they have to have a lot of respect for you, and that must be a wonderful relationship. Well,
Yes, and we've
how
had
describe the
those.
dynamic?
Yeah, we've had those moments of reflection too. For example,
Mm,
I'm full time, our CTO is full time, but one of the original founding members is not full time. And
interesting.
without hesitation, he suggested giving up a significant portion of his share of the business in order to carry the business forward, to make
Wow.
the portion that he retains more valuable in the future. So he was very self aware to acknowledge that this is how we win together.
Hmm. And your background before you started coding, you were doing financial work, leases with planes, and
Correct.
you were at Fox for a little while. You didn't like that, and um, you're a financial person. But then to take it upon yourself to start coding, it seems like such a different skill set that you were searching for, and it ended up making you much more rounded.
It did. And I see my path as a bunch of Venn diagrams together that make sense
Mm,
when you draw all those circles and see the overlap. For when you think of development work and you think of finance work as completely different lanes. However,
mm,
when you're doing consulting and when you're running a business, you need to keep the end user's goal, best interest, purpose, the stakeholders' value in mind. So, having that finance background really helped me not go down rabbit holes as a developer. I knew when to pivot, go in a different direction.
hmm,
Didn't what a 1% increase in marginal gains? What's that worth? Do we go
hmm,
after that for a whole year or do we not? So
hmm.
that experience lent itself to really empowering me to effectively prioritize tasks as a business owner.
You mentioned ICP, right? The ideal customer profile. How important is it for small startups just to understand who their customers are? It seems like a silly question.
It is the most important question,
Yes.
and it's one that I wish that we had started with a little bit more intentionally than we had.
Mm,
So, the
mm,
history behind block forms is my co founder, Bennett, is an insurance broker, and he pitched this idea internally at a massive insurance agency. And they said it would be great if we had technology that consolidated all of these forms that we have to fill out. Go build it. And then we were like, great, we have the validation that we need. This is something that a big organization would value and invest in. And we went and built it. Instead of doing more market research, we would have saved ourselves a
Mm,
lot of pain, not banking on those big customers and not even investing in that sales cycle, because those behemoths in the insurance business, so difficult to get them to sign anything. And there's a lot of CYA and finger pointing, and no
hmm.
one wants their name on the document. So I wish we had come to the conclusion that small, medium business, and I don't mean mom and pop, I mean 100 plus users, well under the 10,000 mark, is our sweet spot. And we would have saved ourselves a lot of heartache if we had done that research up front.
So the first client, so he worked at this place and they had a need, so you built something specifically for them. But then to try to make it more horizontal, you came into roadblocks, right, to fit other businesses. That's what you're saying?
Well, we had to, because they didn't sign up. And
Aha.
there was an internal champion who said that they were our champion, and lo and behold, they never mentioned us internally. So
Oh,
that was a hard pill to swallow. And fortunately, we didn't go too hard in a direction of bespoke technology for the organization. It did apply to
good.
different insurance brokerages, underwriters, general agencies, and now different industries as we've adapted and grown over the years. However, we we had our hearts set on something that just wasn't going to happen.
Hmm. I just spoke to a startup today actually, and they said they're about 3, 4 years old. They said the product, where the product is now, we had no idea that's where it was going to be a year ago. Just there's so many customers said, "Look, this is where you need to go." They had something else in mind, and they're not in charge. The customer
Yeah.
is. Can you say something similar? Does it go in a direction that you didn't think it would?
I, yes, of course. And whoever you spoke to earlier today is totally right. Your flagship customers drive the direction the business goes in. And I think that they should,
Yeah.
because they are your champions and they are your users. You don't, while I've tried to investigate the problem and experience the problem that we're solving day in and day out, at the end, they're the end users, and their feedback is critical to our survival and growth.
Hmm, it certainly is. Tanya, I work. I'm in the tech field as well, and I work with a lot of small to medium, like technology service providers, managed service providers, and they work with a lot of small businesses, sales, right? Not all, but most, they're technology led, and they look at sales like it's some dirty thing, like you're pushing something on somebody that they don't want. The used cars salesperson is ruined, and have to get over that hump, right? Talk to me about sales. It's very easy to make software. I've made software. It's very difficult to sell it.
Yes, you are touching on exactly where we're at. It's time to
Yeah.
scale, and we're sitting there I are sitting here taking deep breaths. How do we get our name out there? How do we sell something nobody knows about? How can we even get people to think of filling out forms a different way? And so now we have to invest in educating the market, getting our name out there. So one lesson that I learned was hiring salespeople isn't going to cut it. You have to equip the salespeople with a brand identity, a name. And that's the marketing piece. And there's a lot of misunderstanding of the differentiation between marketing and sales, but sales needs marketing to
Yes.
substantiate what they're out there selling. And there are people that are so slick they could slide uphill and sell anything to anybody.
Sure.
But software is, you're asking people to change their behavior. You're not selling a widget. You're asking people to invest in learning how to use your tool. And that is so hard to do. Remember, switching from one chat provider to another, email versus um,
Instant message.
we've gone through
Yeah.
so many means of communication and ways to collect information. And anyways, if you can get people to change their behavior, that's when you've got a really, really sticky product in your changing the game.
Yeah, a proper sales engine with, with correct marketing and branding and, leadership and management and just sales itself. I've been forced to, I remember when I started my business in the 90s. I'm a little bit older than you, Tanya, but when I started my business in the 90s, I hired a salesperson and I handed them, you know, the yellow pages, the white pages, and I said, find us work. It's terrible. Right.
Yeah.
It's like handing them Google here, go find. So, they need support. They need lead management. They need, marketing. They need follow up. They need nurture, they need drip. There's so many points to it. And just sales itself, so many of the firms that I work with are owner led sales. Right. So the owner knows the most, and that can only go so far with
Yes.
referrals. If they want to scale, they need to hire a team. Uh, but just the engineer mindset is that, hey, our product's good. People will buy it. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's not the case.
No, your product will collect dust and nobody will know.
Yes,
There's a lot of average half-baked products out there that are making a killing because they have great marketing and sales.
absolutely. Apple in the beginning, right? I mean, Jobs was just a master at that. What is some of those sayings like sell the hole, not the drill, right? And Nike will say, be the best athlete. It doesn't say, hey, ours has the best padding. Ours, the big thing is selling features versus value, especially technicians. Like ours has this report and does this and does that. Nobody can. What does it do for us? Nike says you'll be the best athlete with our equipment. And it's just a big difference of perspective.
Yes, and I think even the smartest people would go a lot farther if they had a bit of self-awareness to appreciate the different disciplines that make a business grow and
Mm,
flourish.
mm,
So going back to how much of it is art, how much of it is a
mm.
formula, well, these big businesses are succeeding with marketing and sales, and they're not just a product. So look to experts in those disciplines to take your excellent product to the next level. Because again, and this is exactly where Blockforms is my business is at.
Hmm,
You can't sell something nobody knows about. You have to
that's right.
create that. People have to get that feeling of, oh yeah, I've heard of that, or oh, so and so's using that. Why aren't we using that? And that takes more than a good project and strong technical team.
It certainly does. And and once it seems like a pitch, people are turned off. So you have to build relationships. It has to be genuine. Despite my best efforts, Tanya, I've become a sales and marketing person, right? Because I'm sure you have too, because you have to constantly sell. You have to, these wonderful principles that we learn about. So there's this one study, forgive me here, but they put a Coca-Cola machine in a university, and it made $100 a day. Then they put a Pepsi machine next to it, and they both started making $200 a day. So the question with one machine is, should I have a soda or not? When there's two, the question is, am I going to have a Coke or a Pepsi? So the
Interesting.
decision is already made to drink. The question is which one. You see these clusters of restaurants, in a plaza or whatever. This must be terrible. They're all competing with each other. No, once you go there, even if you're not hungry, which one am I going to eat at? They actually all rise. So there's all these principles. We're being marketed to people.
Yeah.
We don't want to think it. We don't want to think it, but we are. And it's a wonderful art or science. I don't know. We could have a discussion about that, but it's the only way, not the only, the primary way companies are going to grow.
That's true. People need to feel like they have a need for it. There are
Mm.
so many knickknacks out there that nobody needs, and we're all buying them because someone has created this curiosity or need by with effective storytelling and exposure to the service or object.
Yeah, telling a great story is absolutely wonderful. What's the difference between a leader and a manager, Tanya?
Uh, I think of a manager as more task oriented and
Mm,
leader more vision, mission
mm,
oriented,
mm,
values, driving values. There is a leadership aspect to management roles because the manager is closer to the direct report as they should be. And I personally am most motivated in my work history when my manager knows and appreciates the work I'm doing. However, a leader is someone that a good leader is someone that inspires me and I want to be like them. Not not
mm,
not per, not not even like I want to be like Mike or anything like
mm,
that. More
mm,
just they give the team a feeling of wanting to do their best because
mm.
that leader is doing their best and appreciates every single one of them and we're all working towards this thing together. That's more of the distinction between the leader versus the manager actually being on top of deliverables and day to day.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've had managers who believed they were leaders and they weren't. It's a very tough discussion. Have you had to run into that?
I've spent much of my career managing up. Let's put it that way.
Mm, mm. Because you don't, ego is a fragile thing, so you don't want to discourage.
True, true. And it's hard when you have a very distracted manager or even leader who loses sight of the vision and you are the one who has to keep
Mm,
reminding them this is the vision, you're getting distracted. We're deviating from who we are.
mm. Yeah, and keep them on track. That's what good vision does. I want to bring this up only because you had a tough incident in one of the positions where somebody was inappropriate, and you didn't want to go to HR because you were afraid they weren't going to handle it. You did bring it to your manager, and it was handled there. What lessons did you learn, and anybody listening can learn from that?
Well, that was one incident. I'm afraid that I've been put in that position numerous times and have handled
Mm,
it differently at different times. Younger me didn't want to rock the boat, so that story was when I was younger and wanted the behavior or discomfort to stop without blowing up anyone's situation
mm,
or
mm,
making it a big deal or a thing. Right? I didn't want to be that person making a thing out of something uh,
mm,
with and that was the right way to handle it at that time for me. It's a very personal decision on how you handle those situations, and I have less patience, less wiggle room, less depending on how egregious the infraction is.
mm,
Now I will, especially if I'm a pretty fair person.
yeah.
It's not easy to make me feel uncomfortable. I've worked with a ton of men. I think it's very common to express both ways, men to women, women to women, men to men, whatever, express interest and then decline and move on. But when somebody is abusing power, that's where it's important to raise a red flag within the organization. And if you're an individual who feels comfortable confronting that person yourself, great. However, retaliation is a thing. And I hope you're in an organization where you can go to your HR and feel supported and protected in order to protect others from experiencing that behavior. Because if that individual feels comfortable crossing your boundaries, they're probably doing it to others as well
Mm, mm,
and abusing their power. So, in the scenario of the story you're referring to, that was me learning
mm,
and wasn't major, but I have dealt with major abuses of power, and those were reported and handled, and those people were removed from
Wow.
their role. And it wasn't a malicious thing, it was to protect other people.
So that's the lesson here. Oftentimes, when something happens to us, we think it's isolated, but keep in mind it can be happening to others, and reporting it can help others as well.
Yeah, it's about the greater good, right? I can handle. I'm not easy to push into a situation. Like I might be experiencing something I don't want to experience in terms of an uncomfortable conversation, but I won't be manipulated or forced
Hmm.
to feeling like I'm forced to, or obligated to do anything I don't want to do. But not everybody feels as empowered when put in that situation, and reporting people abusing their power and not responding to no is important to protect people who don't feel strong enough to say no to
Hmm.
somebody who is used to getting their way in an inappropriate way.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a mouthful right there, Tanya. Used to getting their way. Yeah. Yeah. Some people don't like hearing no. Yeah.
They should try fundraising. I'm kidding. I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Or cold calling.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that'll humble some people, right? Yeah, I did that for a while. What was it, like 150 dials a day, when I starting my business? And yeah, that's very, very humbling. You'll be happy for the small things in life after that. As
yeah.
CEO, how do you motivate your leadership?
When you say my leadership, other leaders in my organization,
Yeah.
well, we're a small team. I always lean on listening,
Mm,
asking for their feedback, and when I have an idea, I always consult them when I don't necessarily have to. And I think that mutual trust is there because they know they're part of the decision and the thought process. So, in effect, that's the answer.
mm, listening.
Hmm. Communicating, um, challenging respectfully. We disagree frequently, and I think that's healthy. And there's a lot of respect in those disagreements, and that makes the organization stronger.
Hmm. Good people can disagree, Tanya, right? We all need to understand that, right?
Yeah, and often the disagreement is due to miscommunication
Hmm.
because sometimes the answer is very clear, but we're not hearing each other. And sometimes we need to take a deep breath, have a conversation at a different point in time. Or if we just really disagree, we need to find a baseline on which we make the decision. Is it a
Hmm.
financial one? Is it a relationship one? Is it, uh, by what metric are we moving in one direction or another?
Do you have a process, Tanya, to make, big decisions?
It depends on the decision.
Hmm.
I am I'm not I have the extreme opposite of analysis paralysis. I'm the type of person who makes a decision, goes with it, and I don't regret it. Whatever the outcome is,
Hmm.
I adapt and uh, react and adapt. So it's very true that maybe I should pause and do more analysis, and that's why I bring others into my decision making process. I don't decide on my own. I need those
Hmm.
different personalities that are questioning the thought process. So that's when there's a big decision, I bring mentors, confidants, partners into the conversation.
And the idea is to get other perspective to shed light on it. You don't essentially, or do you say, what would you do? Or do you just say, present all the information that you think I may be missing?
Both, definitely
Hmm.
both. I love to ask, what question am I not asking that I should be asking?
Hmm. remember when I read the Jeff Bezos book, the two takeaways I had. One was they never have a team that can't be fed by two pizzas. So they have small teams. I thought that
Interesting.
was amusing. Yeah, and the other one was uh, he empowers his management leadership to make decisions, and the question becomes, at what point do you make a decision? That's why I asked this question to you. So assume that you waited and got 100% of the information needed to make a decision. You did all the research, got all the questions answered, and if you waited for the 100% mark, it may be too late to seize upon the opportunity.
True.
Whereas if you only got 10%, let's say, and you made it, it was too rash. So he actually has a number of which, if the managers can prove they reached that certain point and it fails, they will not be blamed. And that number is 70%. If you can gather 70% of the information and prove it and it fails, you won't believe it. I thought it was a very interesting way of looking
Yeah,
at decision making
it's an interesting way to quantify it for
and
sure.
quantify it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's easy. If I think a lot of great ideas and uh, aren't pursued because they're stuck in the planning phase. So I
Mm,
don't know when you identify what you have 100% of the information to make a decision. Part of that is a feeling. Do I have all of the information I can imagine that is available in order to make this decision, other than a crystal ball or
hmm.
a
You wish.
psychic or something? Uh, that's when you make the decision.
Do you have a president, Tanya?
A president in block forms,
Yes. Is there a president?
that I'm serving as the CEO and president of the
CEO
organization.
president. Okay. I look president more as kind of the manager and the CEO as leadership, if we use that analogy. So you're
Yeah,
both. So wow. So you take
we're
a
that small.
yeah, you take a lot on. Yeah. What keeps you up at night
Uh,
about platforms?
Depends on at what stage the business is in. Right now, it is fundraising and scaling,
Mm,
because I would love to scale, but we need more resources in order to serve those
mm.
customers. And in order to get more resources, we need that fundraising. But in order to get favorable terms on our fundraising, we need more customers. So it's a
Chicken and the
you're
egg.
nodding because you know exactly what I'm talking
I sure
about.
do. I sure do. I sure do. When I talk to a lot of the tech firms that I work with, that I try to support. So I had one and then I exited in 2019. So these are tech support, technical support organizations, managed service providers. They have three things that keep them up. One these days is security, right? They're afraid their client, the way, ransomware and the way these bad actors are at a scale that we never thought we'd see. Second is staffing. They're worried about, some of their main tech, engineers. If they leave, will they be able to replace them? And the way the market is, unemployment's so low. And then third, of course, is growth. How are they going to grow, organically or through acquisition? Is that similar in what keeps you up?
Absolutely. I unfortunately feel so safe and secure with my co-founders that I don't worry that all of a sudden we're going to lose an important leg of the business and topple over. So again, I'm really grateful for our team. Uh,
Mm, mm.
but when we are in a position to hire, who are we going to hire? How, will they be good, or will they be a waste of our precious resource? And that's extreme. Nothing is a waste. We will have at least learned something from that experience. Um, I think it's similar. Security, we also just achieved SOC 2 compliance. That doesn't mean we're bulletproof,
Congratulations.
but thank you. That doesn't mean we're bulletproof, but that is a very important part of the
Yes.
security piece, to
Yes.
reassure our
Yes.
customers that we are abiding by the principles set and defined by SOC 2. So, yes, the team scaling and having enough cash in the bank.
Hmm. How often do you have quarterly kind of rocks and goals, and um it's so I'm trying to impress upon anybody who's listening some of the things that the CEO has to deal with. I mean, so you deal with the founders. Do you also have a board that you have to report to as well?
So we make up the board and we have two advisors.
I see. And goal setting and reaching those goals
Yeah.
always a challenge.
Always a challenge. There are things out of our control. For example, a partner that we were very excited about last year that we signed the dotted line ready to go, got acquired, and they wiped out all partnerships. Things happen. So we do our goals monthly because
Hmm.
we are in hyper scale mode and because we are managing our resources diligently, and we talk daily because historically we were doing these meetings twice a week, and we found as people managing life and keeping a roof over our heads with sporadic consulting work, the most important thing was falling by the wayside. So
Hmm.
I'd say about 5 months ago, we started meeting daily. And on Fridays, we also just connect a little bit more on a personal level. But we have our finger on the pulse business wise very actively at the moment.
So daily huddles, they don't last long.
Tuesdays and Thursdays are 15 minutes long, and Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are 30 minutes long.
Wow.
It's just that touch point to
Sure.
also feel as if you're not working in an echo chamber.
Right. Now you started pre-COVID right into COVID, which was tough as well, correct?
Yes, that is
Yeah.
true. And then we went out for our first equity crowd fundraise when really unfortunate things were happening in the world, and the
Yeah.
news was those wars, and again is those wars two
Yeah.
years later. So it's startups that are operating in this environment right now have different the investors are and customers have different considerations than they did
Mm,
before. Cash isn't just
mm,
flying around exchanging
no,
hands.
it's certainly not. What advice do you give to startups?
Don't over plan because that plan is going to
Mm,
change.
hmm,
There's a lot out there about planning and planning and planning. And I said this earlier in our conversation. I think a lot of incredible ideas don't make it to reality because they got stuck in the planning stage.
mm,
There's a ton of tools out there to prototype, use third party services. You don't need to build everything from scratch. You will when you prove your idea out, but don't invest in building something from scratch until you've proved your idea out.
mm,
Unless it is a really hardcore SaaS product,
mm.
use some managed services to demonstrate that that is a product that can be packaged and resold.
Viable. Yeah.
Yeah. So my advice, put simply, is go for it.
Mm. And you did, you took those courses, but you had saved money, right? So you were, you didn't, you weren't running at the end, and you decided to still do it while you were working at one particular
That's true.
point. So yeah, so um, everybody, many, even Americans, have the idea. I want to run my own business. I remember when I first started mine, I would hear things, Tanya, like, "Oh, it must be great not having a boss." And I said, I ha-
I'm laughing out
I have more bosses now than I've ever had in my life. Every one of my clients is a boss. Heck, my employees are my boss. My vendors, the banks, do not go into business thinking you won't have a boss. That's for sure. And I work more, than ever before. Um, this seems like it's discouraging, but I guess I'm just trying to be realistic.
I think it's great nugget of wisdom that this is much harder than having a job.
Yeah.
And because when you have a job, you have a function, you show up, you get to go home, and sure there's some businesses that expect you to treat your job like your life, but I know anybody that works for me does not have the same level of passion, commitment, investment, emotion invested in the business.
Mm,
And that is an exhausting experience as a
yeah.
business owner and entrepreneur, that it's on you completely to make it or break it. And nobody wants to look at themselves in the mirror and say, this didn't work, but it happens more often than it doesn't.
It does. The numbers
And
are completely
yeah,
against you.
yeah. And part of that is not willing to pivot, run,
Mm,
not spending your money correctly, wisely. There's a lot of reasons why businesses fail. One of the number ones being you partnered with the wrong person and
yeah.
you are not compatible as business partners. So if you are chasing an idea, don't chase it for freedom. Don't chase it
Mm.
for uh, this notion that you're not going to have a boss, because pressure is a lot higher than a day job.
Certainly is. You're guaranteed a paycheck with a job. Partnerships, I see those collapse often. Sometimes I even hear this, I want to open a restaurant because I want to eat for free. I said, no, pay for your meals. Pay for
That's the
your
most
meals.
expensive meal of your life.
Yes. I don't want to discourage restaurants, but that's a very tough business, right? Gyms, restaurants. I mean, these are, uh, you
Oh
know,
yeah,
uh, yeah, that's a love. That's a,
yeah.
there are
I want to
exceptions,
start
of
a
course.
restaurant because I love cooking. Well, you're not going to love cooking anymore.
You're not. No, I love to cook, and people say that. Why don't you do some catering in restaurants? I say because I love it. That's why. Yeah. And it's fascinating. And again, I don't want to discourage entrepreneurialism, but 50% failing in the first year. What is it? Another 70% in the next 5 years, something like that. But it brings me to my next point. So I started my firm in '93 after I graduated, got some capital. And, Tanya, I was working these 14, 16-hour days and not paying attention. I stopped exercising and I was eating poorly. And before you know it, I got up to, 340 pounds, and the doctor said to me, if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. My daughter was just born. So, it was like a come to Jesus moment to
Yeah.
me. And I spent the next 6, 7 months. I lost 130 pounds. And, you
Wow.
can't treat it like a finish line. You have to just change the way, you work. And people always ask me, as soon as I start saying this right away, they're, how'd you do it? Like there's some magic silver bullet, like, I don't know, I ate cardboard or so, like it's going to be something. And my one word answer is discipline. And I think we've been dancing around
Oh yeah.
the theme of discipline this whole conversation. So I got focused. I now have another life that it's not just me working hard anymore. There's this other life that's involved that I was somehow responsible for bringing into this world. And I have more responsibility. I got disciplined and I lost it. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Tanya.
Discipline plays a huge role in my life, whether it's the discipline to work on my business or the discipline to step away from it in order to make sure I'm well enough
Mm,
to continue to work on my business. And, whether it's the discipline to wake up early, to eat healthy, to exercise.
mm,
And those are all the things we know. It's not, we've all, since we could comprehend words, we know it's important to sleep, we know it's important to eat, we know it's
mm,
important
mm,
to exercise, but it's something that's very hard for us to do, even though the formula is very simple.
mm,
And so just being well takes discipline, and then layer on your goals and the discipline to the courage to pursue those goals, and the humility to make mistakes and fail and learn and continue. That all takes discipline of persisting and perseverance.
mm. Perseverance. I hear, yeah, obedience. I hear control, order. I have this ongoing, thesis that discipline is a spectrum, and I've come up with kind of these 10 elements, and I hear it in what you say. I wonder, with your parents being first generation, I'm first generation as well. I wonder if did your parents not necessarily use the word discipline, but was there a certain amount of them being immigrants into a new country and bringing you in? And was there a kind of different element that you saw in your household that you didn't see in others that might be traced to discipline?
I definitely think my appetite to pursue math and sciences is cultural.
Mm,
It's common to see Eastern Europeans
yes.
participating in the tech space. So I felt a lot of reward when I was succeeding in those topics because my culture valued those skills.
Yeah.
So it's so in that sense, absolutely. Not like nothing like jumping jacks or
Right.
like,
Right.
not like
Get up there.
military
Military.
upbringing whatsoever. No, I still played with my neighbors and got in
Sure.
trouble and all that. But uh, yeah, the culture definitely plays into where we land as kids, young adults, adults, and exposure. What's normal, right? So there aren't, well, my experience, for example, I've spent a lot of time in India and then in Hong Kong,
Hmm.
uh, have been exposed to South African culture at close proximity. And those are cultures with a lot of entrepreneurs. Whereas being raised middle class American, you get a good job and
Mm.
you save and you buy a house and that's the formula. And the exposure and proximity to entrepreneurship took my dream and curiosity from watching TV shows and turned into a reality. I had to believe it was possible for me by being around other people who were in fact doing the thing I wanted to do.
Hmm. And you feel that exposure that has led you and helped you and curbed you into where you are now. Certainly so.
Absolutely, because it's one thing to know you want something so badly, but it's
Mm.
another thing to believe that it exists and it's real for you.
Hmm. As a child, you were interested in finances, correct? So you were interested in numbers and math.
I was a really strange, serious kid. I took myself so seriously. When I was
Really?
9 years old, my dream career was a corporate lawyer.
Huh.
And so, but I was good at math
Wow.
and I was
Wow.
really high strung on wanting people to think I was smart and
Hmm.
believe I was smart. And I knew I was smart and I needed the world to know I was smart. And I got over that with both accomplishment and maturity.
It,
So,
it's funny that generally speaking, that kind of sensibility is a lot more Eastern Europe. I mean, Mexican is a bit more celebratory and lean back and family and
yeah, I think I'm
uh
leaning to that in adulthood.
ah
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
More leaning into the soft skills. And you said something funny earlier about, you're a salesperson now as much as you've resisted being a salesperson.
Yes.
And I resisted for a long time too. And
Yeah.
now I think to myself, all right, this is great. And I my identity as a salesperson. I'm an
That's right.
amazing
That's
salesperson. I
right.
believe it. So that switch needed to happen for where my business is at, doing these podcasts, getting the word out there. So I've stopped resisting this necessary evolution.
And it's mandatory. I mean, if there's a big sales deal and it's close and they want to talk to the CEO, you'll get on a plane, you'll do whatever you right, you'll be right there. I mean, that's it. There's no question. I mean, it's we have no choice. We're constantly selling each other, our ideas, ourself, when we speak to friends, I want to go to this restaurant. You want to go. I mean, it's very. It's just part of what we do, I believe.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me how, yeah. So your father was Serbian, and that was more kind of a dominant. As you get older, you kind of go towards the other side. It's very interesting how we develop that way. It's similar to
Yeah.
myself, actually, too.
Yeah.
Except for the my father's Italian, so they're a bit more laid back and still great engineers and artists, but not as stringent. My mother's from Nova Scotia, very strict, very
Mhm.
educational, very um, boundaries. It's amazing what we gravitate, and then of course our friends and our relatives always have an influence. And being in Southern California, I heard you say you're a beach girl.
I I've lived in Southern California for 13 years, and
Yeah,
I love the lifestyle. Wellness is a huge part of the culture
yeah,
here, and uh, people love to be out and be seen and enjoying life, and but also taking care. Eating healthy, exercising. That's how we socialize out here.
yeah.
So. I try to take the best of all of the cultures. I'm sure there are some personality traits, characteristics that I can draw lines to where I'm like, I could be a little less or a little more, but uh, I do my best to take the best from all of my environments because we're all a product of our environment, every single one of
Certainly.
us.
Certainly, yeah. And of course, I have very close friends that'll keep me in check with that and say, "Okay, Joe, time to dial it back a little bit." I say, "Okay, yeah." So I'm sure you have good friends that do that to you as well. Tanya, what motivates you?
What motivates me? I am motivated by uh, human connection.
Mm,
I feel recharged when I am really connecting with an individual, friends, over a good meal, a cup of
mm,
coffee, glass of wine, whatever.
mm,
That is for me the like how I like to spend my time. And I like I really want to build something. I have had so many great jobs, worked for incredible leaders,
mm,
average leaders, what have you. I am very motivated to build something from zero to
mm,
selling. And
mm,
I want that experience. I'm very motivated by the evolution that comes with that experience. I'm huge
mm,
on personal growth. Also, a very commonly Los Angeles thing, like just being well and pushing boundaries uh, on being the best that you can be. And part of that journey for me is entrepreneurship. So that's the engine that
mm.
drives me to pursue the entrepreneurial experience that I'm having.
It's fascinating. You started off by saying, connection and relationship. Oh, I surmise relationship, but that's what sales is all about, isn't it, Tanya?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm a salesperson now. I told
Yeah,
you.
yeah, you have to be. We all are. Yeah, I've resisted for too long, and I've come to the realization. And yeah, building something from scratch. It's you know I do so much work now with what we do, and I seldom. I think that's why I like cooking. Because I go into the kitchen and it's clean, and then I start pulling ingredients, and starting the burners and, get it, cook, and people come
Yeah.
in and they eat, and then I clean as you go. You always train that way. And then everybody's done and everything, I cleaned everything, and then I walk away. So I've seen the project from beginning to
Yes.
end. Wonderful. Oh my goodness. Why are you cleaning so much? Why are you doing it? Because don't worry, people just keep eating. That's don't worry about that. And I'll still eat there. But I just have nothing and do something and then see it through as a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, it's the experience.
Mm.
Thank you for that analogous example. That is what it is.
So
And I
filling.
yeah, I can't wait to one day look back at the beginning and and recall how it felt then, and have that perspective. And everyone tells you it's the journey, not the destination. And
Mm,
I really live that way.
mm.
It's all about the experiences.
It certainly is. And I mentioned that with losing the weight. So many people, weight loss is billions of dollar industry. There's drugs now and these diets, and they're just so temporary, and people just go back to their old ways. And you have to. You said the journey. The idea is when you get to the end, when you get to your ideal weight, then you really need to work, and then you keep it off. Then you maintain great habits. And, I live 80-20, right? 80% of the time I'm, intermittent fasting, and I'm keeping things down. And then 20%, hey, I go out with friends and I have a drink or two and have some wings or whatever it may be. But then you go back. So again, the journey is everything. How do you measure success, Tanya?
Well, for a lot of it's hard not to do it in dollars, because that is a
Yeah.
very low hanging fruit, easy way to, it's an easy to consume metric.
Mhm.
Uh, However, success to me is that I can live the way I like to live. I
Mm,
don't need billions of dollars to live well. I learn technical skills in order to be able to work from all over the world, because it's important to me to be flexible in my location, and still productive and building. So I feel successful now, even
mm,
though the business isn't successful by any popular media's standards. And there's no headline of Blockforms has shot the lights out yet. But I feel successful already.
you have happy customers.
We do have happy customers.
That's
And
everything.
yeah, and we have customers. And I think it. I'm a big believer in, you get what you give, and
Mm, mm,
karma is real. And we have, just like I have incredible partners, I have incredible customers that are patient for integrations and features
mm,
and are testing with
mm,
us. And those
mm.
are the kind of customers we want. We don't want to sign some customer that has unrealistic expectations and then we're drowning. And so it's all working out how it's supposed to.
Yeah, somebody who's temperamental, you want a partner, and you show appreciation to them. I was reading something recently how there's some things that companies can do or business can do that's low cost but high value. And the example was the Carlisle Hotel in New York City. I know it's on the east side, beautiful hotel, high end, great jazz bar on the first floor. They have a full-time seamstress that seams the initials of the guest in the pillow in their room. Now, how much does that cost for one full-time seamstress a year? I don't know off the top of my head, 50, 60,000, whatever that may be. But the personal touch of somebody walking into their room and seeing that is
Yeah,
is wonderful.
it is. And like you're saying, a little goes a long way. And
Yeah.
acknowledgement is everything.
Yeah.
It- So, and people love to talk about right now, it's super hot topic, is AI going to take our jobs? Nope, those touches are going to be differentiators, right?
Absolutely. AI is not going to take jobs. AI is going to help. Yeah, yeah, we could have a whole discussion on that. Is AI influencing your platform?
Yeah, we're incorporating AI to do
You
what we
have
do
to.
better. I mean, I'm a
Yeah,
data scientist, so
of
even our
course.
CTO is adamant about anyone who touches our product having using generative AI to keep our code up to date and
Mm.
um, easy to interpret and all that jazz. So we live it, we breathe it, and that's because you're better if you do.
Hmm. Do you miss coding, Tanya?
No.
Ah, 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 huh.
No. I'm so glad that I did it, but um, I hang up, not my boxing gloves. I hang up my keyboard. I mean, I'm constantly doing product testing,
Of course.
QA stuff, but actual development work, it's a lonely job. You go into a cave and you think really,
Absolutely.
really intensely, and it's an emotional roller coaster of its own. And it's very rewarding when you build something and it works. And then when you see people use it, that's like, oh, the
Yeah.
mecca.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm a salesperson now.
You surely are, and a CEO. My first language I learned was Basic, and that was back in late '70s, and I couldn't believe there's barely any books on it, and I could now talk to this computer, and nobody else knew how to do it, and and then I started hiring developers and I stepped away from it, and I remember one point we were down a developer, and I said, okay, let me get in. I started coding a little bit, and all the other developers like, no, why don't you go back into the office? Okay, all right, thank you. And the developers, one of them had ski goggles on all the time, and one of them had like those, I forget the candy. It's like a waxy candy, and I had to make sure I had a bunch of them all the time in the kitchen. And you let them breathe. You let them, they're developers for goodness sakes.
Yeah, I was recently on a meeting with a friend of mine who is doing development work for a consulting gig, and it was hilarious. She goes, I'm dropping from this meeting because it's interrupting my flow. And she just hung up. And that was the right thing to do. She was in the middle of
Ah,
like solving this complex
yes.
problem, and the meeting was just, it was going to take away more than it was going to give.
Yeah, I have these large corporations I deal with, and just the meetings for the sake of meetings. That's a whole nother, conversation where they get these ego driven leaders that just want to hear themselves talk. And I'm not saying that was the case there, but yeah, meet and
Yeah,
get something done.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And especially with, if anyone's listening on how to manage technical talent, have the meetings be first thing in the morning and then
Oh,
leave them alone.
yeah,
Because if you
absolutely.
guard them with meetings, you are really interrupting that creative and technical flow. Like you have to go into a cave and just think. Like you're actually
That's right.
visualizing how things need to work,
Mm,
organizing, and it is a very like tunnel vision. And when you take someone out of that tunnel, you're interrupting the progress that
mm.
breakthrough progress that may have taken place at that moment.
It's very, very true. Well, Tanya, thank you so much for your time today. I love speaking to people, to smart people like yourself. It's so refreshing, and I'm hoping that anybody listening can really learn and hopefully help them out as well. So, how can they get in touch with you? Anybody who's listening?
Yeah, so you can get in touch with me directly on LinkedIn. My name is Tanya Vucetic, so Tanya, last name V as in Victor, Ucetic. And my business's website is blockforms.co, so you can get in touch with me there as well.
We'll make sure to put that in the show notes. Tanya, thank you so much. It's like kindred spirits. If I'm in the Southern California location, my daughter's there actually. Perhaps we'll get a cup of tea. Thank
Yeah,
you so
that'd
much
be
for your
great.
time today. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Such a
You be
pleasure.
well.
You too.
Bye now.
Bye bye.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources, and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations.